Today I'm standing out at our research facility here at Ohio State University. And I wanted to tie in some of the things that we've been learning in the modules, specifically on temperature, moisture, to some extent shade. Today is July 18th. It's an extremely warm day, muggy day. It is around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is at that point here in Columbus, Ohio, is when temperatures are the highest. And I thought I would shoot initially this video to kind of explain or time in some of these modules in front of our weather station. And when you're managing turf, as we've seen here with learning about these modules, weather has a big impact on turfgrass health. All right. So a few things I want to point out. Okay, one is obviously it's hot today. It's in the high 80s Fahrenheit. The dew point, when you get up, and you might hear that term, although we don't always talk about that term, dew point refers to the humidity and temperature together. So when a dew point is given, for example, today the dew point for this date is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that means is at 70 degrees, the water or the water vapor in the air condenses to form dew on the leaf blade. That's usually, you'll see that in the early mornings to late mornings. The higher that number, obviously, the hotter the temperature is and the more muggy or water that's condensing. So it describes how hot and humid it is. For example, a dew point of 68 for us personally would mean that conditions are uncomfortable, which is true. I'm out here and I'm not feeling really good about this. And then if the dew point is above 75 degrees, that is considered oppressive for humans. So when you think about the turf grass, dew point plays an important role. All right, it speaks to the temperature. It also speaks to the amount of moisture in the air, which can impact the impact diseases, which I'll show you here in a second. The other thing too that general temperatures can give you, besides just the air temperature, is the soil temperature. Right now the soil temperature is right at 83 degrees at the 5 centimeter or roughly what, 2 inch depth. Soil temperatures, once they begin to average and remain above 70 degrees, we begin to lose root systems on cool season turf grasses. For example, creeping bent grasses. As that temperature increases, and now that we're into the 80s, we can have rapid root loss to our turf, or at least root elongation or root growth stoppage. So right now, this turf grass plant, even though it's nice and green and you look around, it's pretty stressed out. It doesn't have an adequate root system. Okay. The other thing these weather stations can tell you, and as you know from studying, is the evapotranspiration rate, the ET rate. So on this turf, okay, there's a number of things going on. What's the ET rate? Well, one of the things that drives ET is solar radiation, wind, we have a slight breeze, okay, the humidity in the air, which is relatively high, okay. Now another important factor is, since we're losing that root system, there's not as much roots or much water absorbing capabilities for the system. So changes in that soil moisture profile in the top 2-3 inches can have a major impact on the health of that plant. And again, if we look at the temperature here being about 89 degrees right now, if we have a bright sunny day like we see at the moment, what's the general rule of what the temperature, the canopy temperature of that plant is? It's roughly about 15 degrees warmer than the air temperature. So right now, the temperature of this turf, and I measured it before I came out, is around 102, 104 degrees. again, if you think about that, and you talk about how a plant protects this point, when we talked about high temperature stress, you know, around 104 degrees or 40 degrees centigrade, the plants produce proteins that protect themselves from increasing temperature. Okay? So even though this turf, and as you look around, looks pretty green and pretty healthy, it's under stress, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here. So I've moved to our shortcut bent research area, and obviously this is creeping bent grass. What I want you to notice, taking some of the information we've gained from that weather station, is to again look around. If you notice, there is a slight breeze right now. Maybe you can notice the clothes on the clothes rack, or you can maybe hear the little bit of the rustling in the leaves. What that's done versus where we were previously is now that we got a slight breeze going across this turf, instead of having a canopy temperature of 104 degrees, where there's just sun, no air movement, now it's more closer to that air temperature. So if the air temperature is 89 degrees, it is 87 to 89 degrees now on this turf. So the importance of air movement is extremely important. If you have an open turf like this one, then air moves freely across it. You have that benefit of cooling effect. However, if you move into areas where obstructions occur, trees, shade, from that where air movement does not occur, now that temperature will rise up. And so we can see the importance in air movement. So oftentimes on golf courses, you go into an area where there's restricted air movement, maybe the green sits in a low-lying area, or it's set in the backdrop of a wooded area around it. You'll see fans around those greens blowing to get an air movement across it to get that cooling effect. And those fans may run in the middle of the day, they may run in the evening, anything to get some air movement going and to help that plant cool itself, because it cools by evapotranspiration. So again, to stress another important aspect, soil moisture is extremely critical. Okay? So if you have shallow root system on this bent grass, you got an open area and good air movement, you're going to lose ET rates, or evapotranspiration rates, are going to be high. So you're going to lose water. So watch monitoring, watering when appropriate. And oftentimes that may occur late morning. Again, here it's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You may have to come back out here and water the turf. One sign may be wilting, that bluish color on bent. But say if you're managing annual bluegrass or some other turf, you may not get that sign soon enough. So you need to be out with a soil probe or a soil moisture meter, always checking. The second thing too is, with a day like this that's extremely humid and hot, and we've had a high dew point, is that certain pathogens can be very active on this turf, and I'll show you that here in a second. One is dollar spot, the other is brown patch. And what I want to mention about that, conditions are favorable for these pathogens to cause these diseases, but also too, right now, this turf is not in a healthy situation. So the line I always like to say, you're paid to manage turf under stress. Anybody can grow turf when conditions are ideal and the grass is growing under optimum conditions. Right now though, restricted root systems, maybe some compacted soils, high moisture or humidity, this plant's under stress. So how you manage it's going to impact how that grass survives. So one of the key things that's important is to remember, when these plants are under stress, even though you might get some growth, they're not recovering very fast, they are not growing very well, and so at this time they're extremely sensitive to wear injury or that kind of injury, whether it's equipment, golf carts, golfers, whatever. So it becomes extremely important to minimize wear to certain areas, specifically on greens or areas of fairways. And that can be done through varying your mowing practice, distributing traffic from golfers around that. So remember, one of the best telltale signs of your turf under stress is showing the signs of wear. So I just want to show you real quick a close-up of a couple diseases and make a few comments on those. Under these kind of conditions, there are two common summertime diseases that occur on creeping bentgrass, especially here in Columbus, Ohio. One is dollar spot, shown here. Gets its name because the symptoms are initially the shape of a coin or a dollar, and then they coalesce into larger areas. If you can see that around here. And also too, as they remain active, they can really kill the plant right down to the soil level. The second disease is brown patch. As its name implies, it's brown and it's a patch. It's shown here with my lens cap in the middle of this patch. This disease appears overnight. It's kind of interesting. It just appears as those patches. Old-time superintendents used to use an old rule called the 150 rule. And what that said was, if the air temperature at night and the humidity level at night was above 150 total, so 75 degrees temperature, let's say 75 degrees humidity, you would get brown patch. All right? And so, although an old rule and you don't hear much about it, it's not a bad rule to follow. Brown patch likes nighttime temperatures above 70 degrees. Brown patch too also likes a lot of moisture, humidity, high dew point, just like dollar spot. But interesting about this disease too is if the humidity and the soil moisture or wetness are high, you can get brown patch at temperatures below nighttime temperatures of 70. So oftentimes on shaded greens, I'll see this disease first, and it will appear on shaded greens before it appears out in open greens. Again, for the same things we talk about: restricted air movement, more moisture setting there, might be wetter conditions, not as high of ET rates. So just a couple diseases too. Final thing is, again, as I mentioned with controlling it, even though this turf is green, okay, and it looks healthy, okay, it is under stress. And it can manifest itself in many ways. It can manifest it with the presence of diseases, all right? Again, favorable conditions for these diseases and the pathogens like this, but also too, the plant's defense mechanisms may not be all they should be to protect themselves against infection. And then the second thing is, as long as this plant's under stress, you need to manage accordingly.